Okay, good evening, panel. This is from the Underwood Friends of Underwood. I want to put this together for the 135th anniversary of our town. The people up on stage have been gracious enough to give their time to answer a few questions that we have. We'll let them introduce themselves. Before we get going, though, the people that will be asking questions today are all National Honor Society members here in Underwood. Alexis Redshaw, Jr., Brandy May Sr., and Noah Russell Sr. So if we could go ahead and we'll go from Bob over. Go ahead and introduce yourself, maybe how long you've lived here, and then we'll get going.
My name is Bob Pengel, and I moved here the fall of 1964 as a teacher here in the Underwood school system.
My name is Judy Pengel. I've lived here since 1948. Went through school in the one building, and I'm still living here.
My name is Mark Dillis. I've lived here since 1940.
I'm Nancy Dose. I went to high school here. Then we got married in 62, but 64 we moved here in Underwood, so I've been here that long. And well, I worked in the school.
I'm Jim Peterson, and I guess Bob's got a couple years on me, but I've lived here since 1942. One of the unique things about my life was that the old middle school, which we all went to high school and most of us here, both my grandfathers were on the original school board and had their names on the cornerstone that built that building. And both of them were in business in this community in the 20s and the 30s. My mother and dad both graduated here. All my children did, and 8 of my grandchildren go to school.
I'm Joanne Hildreth. I moved to Underwood in 1956. I have 4 children, and they all graduated from Underwood. I was a teacher in Underwood, and I've been in education 60 years. And as far as my age, you'll have to guess.
Started at 85, right?
Pretty good.
Well, I'm Bill Covey. I was born in Bentley, if you ever heard of Bentley. And we went to school over there through the 8th grade until, what year did we come over here? Anyway, we had the 9th and 10th. We went to school in Bentley until, anyway, then we brought after the 8th grade, we come over 9th, 10th, and then eventually they shut Bentley down, and they all moved to come to Underwood. I was born in 1932. That was the oldest one ever. Well, I turned 35 a week ago.
I'm Shirley Justin Koenig, and I graduated in 1953. And both my kids graduate from here. Grandkids are going here. Oh, we've lived here since 1949. I'm Vicki Amy Grote, and I grew up in Underwood in the house that my great-grandfather built, and he founded the town of Underwood in 1882, gave the land to lay out the streets and so forth, and made the agreement with the railroad to build the depot and the station and whatever goes with trains. But anyway, so I have lived here all my life, except for when I was away in college and for a couple years after that. So.
I'm Paul Christopherson.
Well, thank you, everybody, for, again, giving your time and allowing the students here to ask you some questions about your growing up in the area and everything. So, Alexis, if you want to go ahead and start, then we'll get going.
Okay, so I'm Alexis. Some of you kind of hinted at where you went to school and stuff like that. So how did you get to school?
You ever heard of walking?
I rode the school bus from McClellan. I lived by McClellan. We rode the school bus up here to Underwood.
All the kids that live in town walk to school, right? Any kid outside of town drove buses. So parents brought them.
Actually, I ran the school because as the bell was ringing and I could hear Green Mouse running across the field. So,
I went to country school, and we always walked there, summertime, and when the weather was good, we'd ride our bicycles. But, the area out there wasn't in the consolidated, area of Underwood, and a lot of the kids that went to, high school, the bus wouldn't come to their house, and a lot of them had to walk up to maybe 2.5, maybe even some of them 3 miles to catch the bus.
Now, that wasn't uphill both ways in the snow, right? Okay, all right. Just for clarification, just.
I went to country school also. And when it was real cold, it wasn't too pretty. So, it wasn't all easy walking to school, but we always had to walk to school. when we went to country school.
So you mentioned the schools consolidating. When did that happen? How did that happen? Just talking about it.
Between 1920 and 1924.
And what's
Yeah, I subbed in Bentley and McClellan. And the only way I got to school, the superintendent took me because we didn't have a second car. So he would pick me up, take me to Bentley to sub, or take me to McClellan to sub, and then I'd have to take the bus back to Underwood. So that meant I better have everything done that the teacher wanted done, or I'd miss the bus.
How did they decide when to consolidate the schools? Like, who was kind of in charge of deciding when and why to consolidate?
So I was told that Dr. Wiley here in Underwood was the one that was pushing for Norwalk Township to consolidate. And he was a great leader for the community.
we would have had to go to vote, wouldn't it? But I guess
He was a pusher behind it.
he was on the school board. I think the first school board. even.
Was there a reason behind them wanting to do that? Or did they just think it was time to move everybody to one place? To make it easier?
As I remember, didn't they have, what they called a county superintendent at that time? And when they had the country schools, that county superintendent would be over all of the schools in the county. And I went to a country school for the first 2 years of my schooling. And I remember the county superintendent coming to the school and visiting.
Mrs. Leonard.
Yes.
She got in that big car.
And,
Very quietly.
yeah, very intimidating, let me tell you.
Scared to death.
Because we were 8 classes in one room. I don't know if you even realize that, but back then in the country schools, there were 8 classes. Everybody was in one big room.
Did they have one teacher that taught all different
Yes.
classes?
Yes.
How did
In
that
my
work?
case,
Like, kind of how was that system set up? Because like in today's school, we have different teachers for each class. How does one teacher go about teaching 8 different classes in one room?
She didn't have that many kids. She was busy.
Might only be one in a grade. So
Yeah, it'd be like 2 or 1 in your class. And they had a recitation bench, it was called, that's what we called it. A big long bench up in the front. So you came from your seats up there and sat down, and she had class with you. You had another person in your class, and then you went back to your seat. I don't know how they did it.
You
What
couldn't
were
help
they
but listen
teaching?
because you would learn a lot from the bigger classes too, and you could listen to them. And sometimes you'd be learning
What were the other children doing while the teacher was, like, say, first graders? Were they just kind of sitting and listening as well?
I think it probably had
First
their work.
studying, they
They
had
had
their
their
work.
work to study.
You were not jacking around, put it that way. Yes.
We had one teacher who liked to sing, and so we did a lot of singing, and we got A's. And then the next year, we got a different teacher, and we didn't get A's from her. And what, we've been singing all year, we loved it. So that was it. Mrs. Jacobson was a little tough.
When did sports start? What was that like? Were you involved in sports? Were you not? What were you involved in school?
At that time, Underwood didn't have football. They had baseball, basketball, and track.
Didn't have any girls' sports either.
No, no girls.
When did football start?
1964
I think
was
they had
their
girls'
first
sports.
varsity football game.
Well, they say that the superintendent's daughter got killed or something, and that's when they stopped it.
I knew something happened really quick, but I didn't know what it was.
That's what I heard.
They did have girls' basketball in the 30s, but when the war came along, there was a shortage of coaches and people to actually have faculty members. It was discontinued.
Well, I heard somebody got hurt, and that's the reason they said girls basketball.
It's an urban legend.
And he was the one that stopped it.
Yeah,
Not,
Tom Olsen,
no,
way before that.
way before, no.
My mother graduated in 1933, and she played basketball on the girls' team in Underwood. And I've got enough old annuals that there is a girls' team all the way through 1940. And the war started in December of 41. And from then on, they phased it out. Now, maybe there was somebody that got hurt too, but it looked very apparent to me that it was kind of coincided with the war effort, because there was a lot of things going on in the country and a lot of demand for people and so forth, and so it was discontinued at that time. They did continue with what they called the Girls Athletic Association, and you know, it has pictures of all those girls, but it's not quite as organized as what a basketball team would have been. But they did kind of like a glorified PE class, in other words. But they didn't have an athletic association.
When did they bring
In the fifties, we didn't have basketball.
Well, 1973, they started basketball, the year Arla Joe was a senior.
When we started football.
64.
Well, remember when they had football, they had it down at Wyland's,
That was their first,
pasture.
We used to play baseball back in Wyland before that.
64 was their first varsity football game.
Football.
Yeah.
Well, then it used to be, the field's right across from where we live,
Right, it was
where
out
the
in front.
baseball diamonds are. That was
Right.
the
Yep.
football field.
First year, we never had any lights. We played all of our home football games late, or mid to late afternoon on Friday.
Yeah, our first games that we played were fall of '65, because that was our senior year, and that was the first we played any other schools.
Well, that started in 64.
I think they started playing, and then we had, fall of '64, our junior and senior year.
Yeah.
Alexis on that first team.
What was that like, being a part of like the first basketball team when they brought that back? Like, anybody have any thoughts on that? Just, like, how did that affect people
I think
when
we
bringing
were
that back?
were we?
Are you talking about the
You mean
girls'
girls' basketball?
team?
Yeah,
the
when
girls'
they
team?
brought that back, like, how did that affect people? Like, could you see a positive change when they did that?
I don't know if any of our people, any of our girls were involved in basketball, were they? Arla didn't play, did she, Joanne?
Arla Joe didn't play, she wanted to play, but she decided she'd stick with the cheerleading.
Yeah.
But so it really started in 1972, because she graduated in '73. So, with
sports bring people together, and, yeah. I mean, I had the competition, and it just made the school more out in the area,
And opportunities for girls.
Yep.
I think all the neighboring schools, they still had girls' sports too, so Underwood was kind of left out. They was doing.
Exactly, that's right, Paul.
Underwood and Granger.
High schools around us reinstated girls' sports shortly after the war, where Underwood just did not.
Granger didn't have girls' sports either, did they?
That I don't know.
I don't think so. Seems like they did.
Yeah, but the gyms weren't any bigger, two guys.
No.
Sometimes hands, but that's as wide as the gym was. And the ceiling was probably.
Low. When you shot a free throw, it had to go right. Couldn't arch it.
That was back when the girls played 6-on-6.
Right.
They only played half court. And the first 2 or 3 years, they weren't very good. The scores were pretty lopsided, as I recall.
What did you guys wear to school? Was there a dress code? What was that like?
It was jeans.
Pardon?
We had to wear dresses.
We wore dresses, and we had a very strict principal, as all of you remember. Miss Taylor, and I was a cheerleader, and maybe somebody else on here was too, and our skirts had to come below our knees. You couldn't jump with your legs sprawled out or anything like that. You had to have them behind you, and she was very, very particular about dress. We wore dresses, is right. We didn't have pants.
We did too. We had a pep club though, for the basketball. Yeah, we had, and all the girls, it was all, pretty much all girls, and we all had skirts, blues, cotton, some kind of skirts. Yeah, there were some kind of white blouse.
I have pictures here of 1910 or 1914, you can see what the kids wore. Picture of the old school in Underwood.
Well, it's really bad. But anyway, we all sat together and cheered for the team.
It was like a whole section. I mean, even when I was in school, we had pep clubs still too.
So they had great
Yeah,
cheering.
it was a big deal to pick your uniform. If you can imagine 60 girls trying to agree on what to wear all the same. It was fun.
What occupations were found in the community and the surrounding area? So what interests you in high school? Like what drove you to do what you chose as your occupation?
When I graduated from high school in 1959, my dad had me registered for commercial extension school in Omaha at a charge of, I believe it was $10 to go. And the banker lady here in town called and offered him, not me, offered him a job for me in the bank. And he accepted it, and I went to work in the bank and was 40-some years later still doing the same thing. That's my story about it.
Was that something you enjoyed doing?
Oh, I loved it. Chances, the odds of going to college back then were not that great.
How many of you attended college after high school?
Yeah, see, you didn't do it.
I had 32 in my class, and only 2 of them.
I went to work at the telephone company, Northwestern Bell, which you don't know about either. The day after graduation, so no vacation like you guys have. And then I got married and had kids, and then I started up at the school, elementary school, library, and that. But no, we just didn't go to college.
I had worked for 3 years while I was in high school at a Dartmouth, because Underwood got out early enough that the kids could go over there and get a job. And kids in Omaha, plus they're still going to school.
Somebody's arguing this.
You know, Dartmouth had horse races. And Vicky's dad was the electrician over there, and he knew there were a bunch of kids out here that could get out of school early, real early. So there were about 5 of us that went over there and worked there summers. Well, when I graduated, the guy I worked for came out and talked to my folks and wanted me to go to Kentucky and take pictures over places. And West Virginia and New York and California, and I did that until the Army drafted me in '62. And then after I got out of the Army, we settled down pretty much here. And, everybody,
Now you do drywall.
yeah. Good stuff, good stuff.
I intended on going to college, I had money saved to do so, and I had a small, tiny little scholarship, and, the neighbor's farm was for sale, it was 190 acres, and he wanted $225 an acre. And so, I talked him into a down payment of about $4,000, and there's the lady back there, and, anyway, that was a long time ago, but, it's hard to imagine today, but anyway, it all worked out pretty well, and we did make a goal, but I remember the principal, Ms. Taylor, was really disappointed.
Yeah.
You need to go to college, and, Ms. Taylor was really, a pretty cool principal. She was a tiny little lady, but everybody was scared to death of her. If your name was, Robert, you were referred to in class as Robert. There was no Bill, you were William. And if you were, that was just really, really, and absolutely no kind of horseplay, anything tolerated. Her tolerance was zip. But, and I asked one time, how in the world did she arrive in Underwood? And as the story goes, and maybe it's just a story, but they had a 7th and 8th grade class that was moving, it was going to be in 7th and 8th grade, and they were full of rambunctious boys that were farm guys that kind of had roughed up, I mean, not physically roughed up, but made life very miserable. There were some teachers down in grade school, and she was hired for that particular purpose, and she accomplished the deed. They were under control, no problem with Ms. Taylor. Okay.
Mr. Knowlton made you stand up and pay attention to him.
He was your backup for sure.
When you heard him walking on them steps, you paid attention.
Let's say, you could lay a hand on a child at that time. Yeah, he did.
I remember one time somebody put the tack on the study hall teacher's desk, and that was Mr. Knowlton. And he was gonna be caught, or he was gonna set them down so hard on that tack, the tack come out through the top of their head, but he didn't know it was one of the girls that did it.
Now, Miss Taylor would say whatever was wrong and reprimand you, and you had to go see him, the superintendent after that. That was even worse, so. I mean, then one week I remember too, when you went to the restroom, you had to put that little block up, remember, you'd sign out, and you had to put that little block around it. You couldn't go if that block was up there.
How is, since most of you raised your kids here, do you see a lot of similarities and differences between when your kids went to school, in the 70s and maybe 80s versus when you were in school, living your life here in town as you have?
They had a lot bigger selection of subjects they could take.
Their opportunities were a lot greater than what ours were. When we was in school, yeah, you had some sports, but very few of the kids played sports because anybody that grew up on the farm had to go home and help dad farm. And that's not the case today, and even, when our kids were growing up, yes, there were kids that had to work on the farm, but there was a lot of kids that played sports and then went home. So yeah, it was more lax for our kids than what it was when we was growing up.
Not very many kids drove cars either.
No.
Very few cars.
We definitely had no cars, and our kids didn't have cars either, I guess. But we lived in town, that makes a difference. When the kids were out in the country, that was a different story too. Parents would have to bring them. Our parents never, my dad worked, but my mother never worked outside the home. I always worked when we were married, everybody here did, I think, so that's a big change too.
When I was going to school, there were 6 of us kids. And all 6 of us, while we was in school, were either in sports or played in the band, primarily the band. But we would drive like the pickup to town. We never had a car of our own, the kids. It was either we drove the car or we used the pickup. If Dad had to have the pickup, then we drove the car. But, as far as us kids having a car of our own to drive whenever we wanted it, none of us ever had that. And even when we was growing up, we had 1 bicycle between the 6 of us kids.
Did you sit on each other's laps, or how'd you get where you needed to go?
We did, 8 of us got into a Studebaker and went to Texas when I was in 3rd grade. There was 8 of us in that car, there was no air conditioning in it.
Very enjoyable trip.
Yeah.
How'd the railroad impact Underwood? Because Vicki, you said your grandfather, or your great-grandfather negotiated some terms with the depot and the railroad. How has that impacted when you were growing up, as well as maybe even today?
Well, obviously, the town existed because of the railroad, and up the line, it kind of follows Highway 191, Neola and Persia, and I don't know what else up there.
You got that wrong, 191 followed the railroad because of the railroad.
Well, that's what I mean,
There
yeah,
wasn't any
yeah,
highway.
that's what I mean, like how it, the towns that are there now, were established because of the railroad. And, I'm sure, I mean, and there were businesses in Underwood, there was a hotel, and there was, yeah, well, there was even a drugstore when I was little, doctor, grocery stores, and
Doctor, there's a doctor, drugstore,
lumberyard, big lumberyard.
Rockland and
So, I mean, I think, for a time, definitely the railroad, had a positive effect on businesses as well. It's just,
in any of our towns that are here, the railroad was starting to go downhill. The railroad days was ahead of us. There was 2 fast trains that still come through. When I was in high school, the Rock Island Rocket come through, and in the Milwaukee Hiawatha, Tom Knowlton told us it always come right through when his class was there. And we always had to watch the train instead of the class. But anyway, he said that train hit Underwood at 110 mile an hour. And I don't think there's any trains go 110 today.
I remember as a kid, we kids in the neighborhood would go down to the Milwaukee track, which is the lower track. The other one's gone, of course, the Rock Island. But we would go down there because the mail would be brought to the town. And as the train went through town, they would hook it. They would drop it on the ground, but then the people from the post office had taken it down to the track and stuck it up on this hook of some sort. And when the train would come by, they would whip that bag off, and that's how they took the mail out of the town. They would drop off our bag for our town, and then grab that as the train went through. No stopping, all done.
Sometimes things didn't go right.
Yeah.
They ripped the bag wide open, and there were letters from here clear up the creek.
But they sorted the mail on the train, that
Yep.
Yes.
took the bag, and they'd sort when they went to Chicago.
Yep.
The only thing I can remember trains
Well.
being used for was,
I grew up in a town called Pisgah, and we had everything. That town had everything you possibly want, and now it's almost a ghost town. It hurts after you lived there all your life, and then there's nothing there but a restaurant.
What,
the lumberyard got a lot of coal and a lot of lumber off the railroad and Singer. I barely remember the elevator, which is where Kramer's building is now, and that was used, but I barely remember that being used. The only other thing the railroad was used for, there used to be a bulk gas transport thing on the east side of the highway, that tank cars came in and put gas into that. Otherwise, you know, I don't remember any other freight coming in on the thing.
We used to get a hobo every once in a while.
Between the lumber yard and the elevator and the little brick building was the city jail.
Yeah,
I don't remember it ever operating, but, I remember going by it.
Is it fair to ask if any of you visited the city jail?
I was scared to even go by.
Earlier, some of you mentioned, like, some of the things that Underwood used to have with the grocery stores and the hotel and the lumberyard. How is, like, those things diminishing from the community, like, the less things, how has that affected your lives, like, as well as the community, like, having fewer things here in town? Because, like, we don't have a grocery store, you have to drive to Council Bluffs to get things, how has that affected people?
Most people work and stuff in town.
I don't think it really affected us. I mean, some people maybe, but everybody drives and everybody goes to town for everything. That's why they can't keep going.
Yeah, because it was a result of people not
Yeah.
using those things that made
Right.
it totally.
We'd like it, it'd be nice to have them here, but it would never make it because we have to go there all the time.
That's one of the ways times have changed so much, basically, is the fact that when we were young, we had grocery stores and so forth because people didn't run to Council Bluffs for just anything. And now we're in there all the time. Even those of us that don't work in there, we still are in there, so.
And you kids can get there anytime you want, so.
Then people feared that the big grocery stores, it was Safeway at that time, they probably had 4 or 5 stores in Council Bluffs, and people feared that they would put the little grocery stores out of business, and they did, and they kept getting bigger grocery stores in Council Bluffs, and people would go there instead of the small ones because they could sell cheaper. And money talks to everybody.
You guys remember the Tuesday night movies? Free movies?
Sure.
Down where Humble used to be, there was a gazebo, and they had free movies every Tuesday night during the summer.
Outside. Now, in Pisgah, we had an indoor movie house.
Yeah, but
You kind of live large over there.
you was up there where we got cold and winter.
So you mentioned UMBA. When did UMBA, because I was from Council Bluffs, and, you know, until we moved out here, we'd never heard of UMBA or anything like that. We always had the skating rink just a couple miles from where we grew up. But when we moved out here, myself in 2006, and I'm sure the kids have always had the skating, and UMBA's always been around. When did UMBA really kind of become, I guess in my opinion, kind of the center point of Underwood?
1952, somewhere in
52
there.
or 53, yeah, I think 53.
His dad, my dad, were instrumental in getting all of that going and building, working on the old building that we had here, and we grew up skating there, and
but before that, we had gone to McClellan and skied for several years. And then, when that started in Underwood, it was only skating 2 Friday nights a month. Because Square Dance Club had it the other 2 Friday nights. And,
When I was growing up, we had to skate in on Monday nights because we didn't own their own skates, and the man from Harlan loaded up his skates in his truck and came every Monday night so we could skate, which was at Alma. So it was really a cool thing when Alma was able to buy their own roller skates and didn't have to use Monday night. 'Cause my dad would come to pick me up, and I had I had to quit skating about half an hour before they were closing because it was a school night, so that was my time, and I would keep going around like that, pretend like I didn't see him standing there. But I was really happy that it wasn't Monday night anymore.
They still do that.
Pictures 10 and 12 cents,
I went to movies in McClellan, that's where I went.
almost as good as the free shows in Underwood.
I think it was free. I think it was free.
You mentioned
I remember when milk was delivered at your door.
Yes.
You guys,
Yeah.
would that happen?
And the old
Yeah.
man,
Yep.
You mentioned some of the movies in McClellan. Where did they have this? 'Cause I've lived in McClellan my whole life, and I've never heard of them having movies in town. Like, that's never been something my parents
It's
have
in
ever told us
skating
about.
hall.
So it was on the hall.
No,
They also had an outdoor.
it was
business.
outdoor.
They had outdoor.
Where the rings, trucking thing is, on the corner,
Yeah.
down on the corner, there was a grocery store there. And then the next lot was empty, and then I don't know what was over, garage or something, but this empty lot, they put a screen up at the end of the lot, and had chairs and benches and stuff, benches, I guess, blankets and stuff, that's where it was, outside there, but between these two buildings. Now, they might have shown it inside, but we saw it outside.
Wasn't there a guy from Council Bluffs that came out?
I have no idea.
Seems like there was.
well, where Umba is, there used to be a big bandstand, an octagon-shaped bandstand, and then to the west of it was probably a 16 by 24 board thing that they put a screen on, and they showed movies one night of the week. I think it was Tuesday night, under Tuesday night. And the merchants paid so much to have this, and it was free movie. The stores were open.
It was really a good place to get a lot of sugar bites.
So with the progression of time through the town and getting around easier and everything, when the interstate was actually formed, what effect did that have on the town with like cross traffic and the ease of getting from point A to point B?
For Underwood student, or Underwood people, you go out and jump on the interstate, you could be clear over on the west side of Omaha in less than a half hour. And before the interstate came in, it would take you 45 minutes to an hour going down 191 and then going through Council Bluffs and through Omaha. Today, we can go clear to 208th and West Dodge Road in 45 minutes from our house to our daughter's house. Once we leave Underwood, we don't get a stoplight or a stop sign until we get within 2 blocks of her house.
When we got married, we lived in the house that the interstate is on right now. That was where we lived in 1965.